admire the teachers of the previous era. I also admire the teachers of today. I shouldn't say we're not doing a good job. We're doing a very good job. But the teachers of the early stage, they were really morally upright. You couldn't hear of a teacher defiling a student, or having a pupil-teacher relationship, or having a teacher going around drunkard. In the settings, the teachers were the ones who were the chairpersons, you remember. If you are at a wedding, they'll say, teacher so-and-so be the secretary, teacher so-and-so be the treasurer, be the minute taker. We are saying the teachers of that time were really diligent and morally upright. They were the source of knowledge. Teachers were the encyclopedia of the societies to which they belonged. Like I was telling you, a teacher in a village, if you had a teacher at the village level, she would be the chairperson. He would be the treasurer. He would lead the closing prayer. He would be the one to lead the opening prayer. You would not close the meeting without saying, teacher so-and-so, what are you saying? They were the encyclopedia of the societies. And to crown it all, teachers must be strong disciplinarians. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not ready to be a strong disciplinarian, don't join the teaching profession. You can desert, go to business. We want teachers who are professional, who can cause a positive influence, teachers who are morally upright. Teachers who defile students, that one is unprofessional. Those are the duties of a teacher. And we'll quickly go to the teaching effectiveness. Why do I give you the teaching techniques? I want teaching to be effective. If you teach and learning doesn't take place, then I don't say teaching has been effective. It's, for example, for us, the ordinary people. If I say come and you don't come, my communication has not been effective. If I tell you dress properly and you don't dress properly, then my communication is ineffective. If I teach students that when we are greeting old people who are supposed to kneel and you don't kneel, teaching is not effective. We want to be effective in our teaching in a way that when we teach people something, I mean the people something, there is change. I cannot spend 3 years or 5 years teaching teachers the techniques of teaching, and I still find people who are still drawing the lesson plan in the wrong way. I find people who are drawing the scheme of work the wrong way, who are missing things here and there. Most of us are going to class without a lesson plan. But scheme of work, I'm happy they do. But a scheme of, a lesson plan, sometimes we miss. Teaching is not effective. If I'm supposed to change attitude, I'm supposed to change behavior, and I don't change, then teaching has not been effective. Then we're looking at teaching effectiveness. Teaching effectiveness refers to the ability, refers to the ability of an educator to facilitate meaningful learning. To facilitate meaningful learning. If people learn different things or unnecessary things, meaningless things, that is not effective teaching. So it's an educator who has the capacity to facilitate meaningful learning. And we say there are some factors which can cause this. When we're teaching, we expect to have effective teaching and learning. If you teach a class of 60 students and you teach them the tricks of teaching, the techniques of teaching, and you find only 20 are the ones who are able to draw a good lesson plan, to draw a scheme of work, we say teaching has not been effective. There are factors that can cause that. I come here, I teach you, I demonstrate, we practice, we exercise, but at the end of the day, no skill has been acquired. I can say my teaching has not been effective, but there are factors that cause that. And we will end at this. When we come back, we look at the factors that facilitate or affect effective teaching. There are several factors which affect teaching and learning. We need to look at them so that we're able to avoid them. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. It's been Kabazira Dina, lecturer Mountains of the Moon University. Let us meet in the next session where we'll discuss factors that affect or facilitate teaching and learning. Thank you very much. Oh, hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our session. In the last session, we looked at the effective teaching and learning, the effectiveness of teaching and learning. And we looked at what it means to have an effective teaching or learning. We ended at the section where we're just going to look at the factors that affect or facilitate the teaching and learning. Once again, it is Kabazira Dina, a lecturer at Mountains of the Moon University, going to take you through this session. It's unfortunate I'm not seeing you, I'm not interacting with you, but I hope wherever you are, you're practicing what I'm talking about or you're internalizing it. Factors that facilitate effective teaching and learning. One factor we can talk about is effective communication. If you're not speaking well, if you're not, sometimes use very complicated English. Sometimes we're in a disco and we're trying to teach when there is a noisy place there. Those are factors that can affect effective teaching. The first one we talked about, effective communication. Communicate effectively, use the right language, use the correct verb, use the correct voice, don't shout. If a class is a class of 30, do you have to make noise? No, you're supposed to vary your voice. If it's a class of 100 and then you're speaking to yourself, that's not effective communication. Effective teaching method. Most times we look at the methods and we choose, I'm going to use the lecture method for P1. Teach, explain, and move out. That will affect teaching and learning. That's why we're saying we need to choose an effective teaching method to get effective teaching and learning. Assessment and feedback. If you don't assess your students, if you don't get feedback to know if teaching has taken place, that is why you say there is a Coca-Cola song we used to have. Wherever there is school, there is homework. Wherever there is teaching, there must be assessment. Why? We need the feedback. Remember, the most important thing is that there is no teaching if learning hasn't taken place. Let us master that one. There is no teaching, there is no learning, time wasted. Teaching without learning, time has been wasted. For the children to learn, a teacher must endeavor to link the new body of knowledge to the previous experience. You remember our learning cycle, we're talking about need identification. We learn from the unknown to the known. If you learned addition and multiplication in primary 2, at PhD level it still remains addition and multiplication. Planning at this, the teacher must be able to link the previous knowledge to the new knowledge, the previous experience to this experience. We learn from the unknown or what we already know, from the known to unknown. Another point we can talk about is that readiness and the level of preparedness of a child. If a child is not ready or is not prepared for any learning, don't waste your time. That is why us as teachers, when we're going to a class for lower primary, we first introduce our pupils by dancing around, singing around, raising their mood, raising their motivation, and preparing them for learning. When it's break time and then you introduce a new topic or you introduce a lesson, you know students will not be ready. When it's lunchtime and then you say, continue learning, the students will not be ready. So the readiness is very important. The preparedness of a child must be catered for. No matter how well you handle your subject matter, no matter how well you teach, if the students are not ready, if the pupils are not ready, You'll excuse me, I'm talking a lot about students, but I'm meaning the pupils. It can mean both. I can talk about students, I can talk about the pupils. It means the same. If the student or the pupil is not ready to learn, even if you're teaching very well, that's a wasted time. So the readiness and preparedness of a child is very important. If you teach students who are not ready, you're wasting time. The children with high interest, motivation, aptitude. Aptitude is the capacity to grasp. If the student has issues with the aptitude, the capacity to grasp, the capacity to remember, they will have issues with learning. So we must cater for this. They must have high interest. They must be motivated. That's why we say the attitude must be right. The aptitude, the capacity must be right. The intellectual capacity, the high level of assimilation. How do you take in, how do you process information? If I tell you about general teaching techniques, how do you interpret it? How do you assimilate it? It affects the teaching and learning. There are some physical defects. That's another factor. People with hearing impairment, if you don't make them sit in front, for example, they will not listen. If students are blind, they have issues with learning. If the student is mentally retarded, there are some students or pupils who cannot understand, who cannot comprehend. That one will affect teaching. That's why we have to have the special needs kind of education. We are talking about the physical defects. There are many physical defects. I would give you an assignment in your own books, in your own logbooks, to write down like 5 or 15 defects. We can go even to 15 defects that can affect or hinder learning. List them, check yourself, write. The blindness, hearing impairment, and many others. Remember, we're looking at the factors that affect effective teaching. Anxiety and fatigue. If the student is anxious, you've seen primary 3 and primary 5. Students tend to run away from classes because of anxiety. They are fearing that the teacher is going to beat them, that the teacher has given assignment and the student hasn't done the assignment. There's that kind of anxiety. If they are fatigued, if they are tired, take an example. Myself, I'm teaching you in sessions. If I was to teach you for 5 hours, you'd be fatigued. If I'm to teach you after a hard work, if you're stressed, you'll not be able to learn. That is why we have to cater for the anxiety and fatigue. We have the environmental factors. I talked about a school that is nearing a disco dance hall, a school that is nearing a church, a school that is in a very dirty, crowded place. So we're talking about the environment. The environment must be good for learning. If it's not good, learning will not take place, so it will affect the child's learning. We can say on the whole, good teaching. Probably I can also talk about the home environment, because if the home environment is not conducive for learning, the child will not be able to learn. The school environment, the home environment must be favorable for learning. There are some pupils who are coming from homes that are very chaotic, fighting mothers and fathers. You find the student is stressed, is anxious, is fatigued, so the home environment is not good for learning. They go home, the first thing they have to do is to fetch water the whole day, then they come to school at midday. The home environment, the school environment will enhance the child's learning. On the whole, we can say good teaching prevents disciplinary problems. Good teaching prevents disciplinary problems. Good teaching prevents disciplinary problems and enhances learning, and poor teaching encourages disciplinary problems. So if we are not having effective teaching, we're going to have disciplinary problems. If we're having effective teaching, we're going to discourage disciplinary issues. There is encouraging and discouraging. Discouraging is by having good teaching methods, effective teaching. With that one, the teaching and learning will take place. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. Let us meet in another session where we are going to discuss more about the tricks, techniques of teaching.